Welcome to Esoteric-Truth Radio, and I'm your host, Trinity. Today I'm doing just a very small show today, but I'm going to cover a lot of bases. So here it is. We got UFOs, Stargates, extra dimensions, portals, and why we invade. I have for quite a few years subscribed to aliens being from Earth, living and roaming on this planet. Now, I don't say our planet as I don't think that they are different from us. They may look different or think differently, even function differently, like eyesight, consciousness, thought processes, and behaviors. But what makes me think that this is more so than otherworldly beings visiting our planet is based solely on their modes of transportation. Any, and I mean any beings that may be visiting would have to have some basic knowledge on how this world works, how it can function, and how it can, of course, go back and forth. If Area 51 was real, and if there was a crash, the only thing we never hear about is how is it that us as humans were able to touch, experiment, and test materials that could have come from thousands of light years away. You never hear humans interacting in other dimensions. And let me explain what I mean by that. Many of us have had either paranormal sightings or sleep paralysis. We even had people that claim to have died and either seen heaven or hell, but never actual interaction. We can use some of our senses to look or to hear, but never move, touch, or alter any of those experiences in real time and in reality. And if we did, I think it'd be a giant leap in our human nature and possible human evolution. Before I go any further, I want to be sure to say that there are some things I will not go into full detail with, as it can be easily researched. And I personally think that fringe topics like this, people like to use their own resources. Okay, so anyway, here's a quote. We have the technology to take ET home. Anything you can imagine, we already have the technology to do. But these technologies are locked up in black budget projects. It would take an act of God to ever get them out to benefit humanity. Now, that was said by Ben Rich, a former CEO of Lockheed Skunk Works. Now, if you ever heard any of my shows, then you fully know I do not consider anyone with an Ivy League degree a person who is a know-all, as there are high school graduates who can't read. But those in those fields that can largely change our society are given degrees due to understanding regurgitated information. They just happen to memorize it better than others. And most schooling now frowns upon free thought. Don't believe me? There's a great debate with Bill Nye the Science Guy and Ken Ham. Go look it up. Anyway, most people in the UFO field took the quote I just gave and accepted it, even though it seems vague to me that technology to take ET home is supposed to mean we have a space shuttle that can easily go from planet to planet. I see it as we have technology to stay in contact, visit, and live amongst those who live here and who have been here, even engaging us on this planet, just in different environments, whether it be very far underground or even that we may be able to go deeper into the oceans than they tell us. Alien environment, and so on does not necessarily mean out of this world. If there is technology or a way to actually go to other places in the universe, I think that it would be from beings that have seen and been through things right here, that lived with us, intervened in our technological affairs, including our giant leap into the technological age, out of nowhere. In the convenient bubble that we live in, as our story here in the US is that we are the first to the moon, you can go around the world, and I promise we're not the only ones who make that claim. Things like esoteric knowledge, magic, forbidden tech, bloodlines, hybrids, and all the rest are what we use to explain things like the Baghdad battery and the Nazi bell. We accept that we found at some point on the earth and then reverse engineered, and that's how we got where we are today. Seriously? If we would accept that, Stephen Hawking, Albert Einstein, and Nikola Tesla would never be talked about. Instead, we have other so called heroes like Hanna-Barbera from the Jetsons fame and Gene Roddenberry from Star Trek, as they seem to have things figured out way before flip phones and microwaves were invented. The last time I checked, there was no instruction manuals with either of those to do reverse engineering with. We have accepted television and movies as blueprints, even though both of those creations are never really discussed in full unless you're looking for it. And of course, those two things are covered in conspiracies. Now, Stargates and Portals. On June 29th of 2012, NASA said this, and I quote, observation by NASA's Themis spacecraft and Europe's cluster probes suggests that these magnetic portals open and close dozens of times each day. They're typically located a few tens of thousands of kilometers from Earth, where the geomagnetic field meets the onrushing solar wind. Most portals are small and short lived, others are yawning, vast, and sustained. Tons of energetic particles can flow through the openings, heating Earth's upper atmosphere, sparking geomagnetic storms, and igniting bright polar auroras. After they announced this, as I think they only make these kinds of announcements after they've already studied them, and I say this because apparently in the late 1990s, NASA's polar spacecraft spent years in Earth's magnetosphere and it encountered many X points during its mission. Now, the X points is the portals. So, what we started sending after we got the information back, which of course gave it a full coordinates, we knew which ones were open, which ones were closed. Of course, we're not going to go to the closed ones. We want to stay with the ones that are fully open. So, every time we hear about a new probe or a new shuttle or a new satellite or something going up, there's about 20 or 30 little ones that we don't hear anything about, that we don't get the glory of watching um, televised in real time. So we have to really consider what's going on with that. But anyway, which is so that means that we've been testing it for years. And now though they knew something was up there since the 90s, after this was announced, then in 2012 there was talk to send the Solar Terrestrial Probe. It was supposed to go in 2014, but it actually only launched 3 months ago in March. But of course, no talk about the portals, um, and its real reason for being sent out in the first place. It's just one more thing that we're trying to do. Um, but it's pretty much just a cover up on what we're really going out there for. We're not going to other worlds. We're actually going into portals and we're going into other dimensions. And I couldn't possibly verify if some of the images that we're getting back, if it was an image of a walking, talking turtle, I doubt they'd show it to us anyway. But I think there's a hell of a lot of other things that are going on, and we're just not hearing anything about it. So, anyway, and almost all places on Earth and their ancestors spoke of ways to transport. There were books written about beams or elevators that go to the heavens, and we got the infamous Tower of Babel. Seems crazy, right? Well, yes and no. It seems that mainstream media likes to add a bit of controversy. And in 2011, CNN allowed someone in the conspiracy field to write an article about the Iraq Stargate. Oh, and it covered everything, by the way. I'm only going to give you a few sentences. You'll be able to find it on your own. Um, Either way, here's a bit of the article. Back in the 1920s, the Iraq Stargate was uncovered in Baghdad. This Stargate was surrounded by the Green Zone. During the Iraqi War, and was the whole purpose for the war, weapons of mass destruction was an excuse. Having control of the Stargate was the goal of the Bush administration as well as Nazi Germany. This was a repeat of when Hitler and Nazi Germany went to Iraq to fight against the British, as both wanted control of the Iraq Stargate. Fuhrer Directive Number 30 dealt with German intervention in support of Arab nationalists in the Kingdom of Iraq. During the 1930s, representatives of Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy attempted to gain favor with various Iraqi nationalists and promised support against the British. On May the 2nd of 1941, after tensions mounted on both sides, the British launched preemptive land strikes against Iraqi forces and the Anglo-Iraqi War began. Rashid Ali immediately requested that the Germans make good on their earlier promises of assistance. The International Zone, or formerly known as the Green Zone, is the heavily guarded diplomatic government area of closed off streets in central Baghdad, where U.S. occupation authorities live and work. The Green Zone is the central city that includes the main palaces of former President Saddam Hussein, where the Stargate is located in the basement of the main palace. The area houses the civilian ruling authority run by the Americans and British and the offices of major U.S. consulting companies. I think that it's fair to say that when you take what I already stated and what I just said, some of it actually adds up. How many satellites are actually floating around? What do you think they're there for? Would people lose their minds if we knew that beings on this planet are helping us to go further into space? And it wasn't that we all of a sudden became smart. That help has been here. Yet the reason we cannot say anything or they cannot say anything is because there's also horrific ideas and horrific consequence. Good versus evil representation, but ones that our minds can only perceive only if it was in a movie. Well, it has been. There's been a few movies that I'm sure you guys have heard of before, like They Live and Cocoon. Many of the most realistic movies and television programs came around the inception of disclosure to the masses and media. And yes, after we already had newspapers, it wasn't really ingrained until movies got bigger as to give us that subliminal feel. The term used for the generation that went through this is tabula rasa, which in Latin that means clean slate. In other words, right before common sense or questioning comes in, we're at a certain age where learning and processing is at its peak. This is for those in, let's say, their 40s and over. That would have been our cartoon age. Those older than maybe 60, they would have been maybe more engulfed in movies like the Invasion of the Body Snatchers or The Man Who Fell to Earth. What we're perceiving becomes part of our brain process. It's like that one person you know that tells the same story over and over again. And you want to be polite, so you listen, even though you already know how it ends. Not because you were there, but from the repetition, you begin to feel like you're part of the story. You might even be able to repeat it to someone who never heard it, and it might sound to them like you were there. Um, this is how you get some of the best writers, liars, storytellers, movie and television executives, and even actors. This is how they pull that off. Now, the largest question that I hear and read from others is how and why would we have conflict? My theory is that we don't, but we are in fact caught in a war that is not of our doing. The Majestic 12 documents, whether you believe them real or not, I feel has some truth to it. I love when someone says, that's crazy talk, that never happened, but don't know what the Freedom of Information Act files are and that they are readily available on the internet. There is more horror out there than you can imagine, and it comes straight from the alphabet agency's mouth. Our internal genetic want for power and easily submissive behavior, in not knowing that our numbers far exceed the 1%, that we're frustrated with possibilities, we refuse truths, and we revel in ignorance. We could have easily been manipulated by beings that were already here. They could tell us things that we would have never known, giving us history, information, technology, etc. The battle of the haves and have nots is something that we can all attest to, and for good reason. It's in our nature. The biggest conspiracy is that only some of the higher ups know. It's not some of them. It's all of them. They all know. There's no internal fight between countries. There's no financial war or crisis. There's no divided politics like Democrats and Republicans. That's all for show. If you don't think so, look around. I mean, really look around. Not only are we the worst society as far as medically inducing ourselves in falsehood, but we also have a massive case of Stockholm syndrome. We give our master a place behind closed doors to decide our fate, and they love us for it. They take our freedom, food, shelter, and give us shiny gadgets and watch us as children playing on Christmas morning as the parents sneak off in the other room to get plastered on eggnog. Does what I say upset you? Because it should, as it upsets me. I'm part of the problem as well. But like myself and others that listen in, contribute, take time to learn, they're the ones that are helping silently, that are making a difference, is scaring the crap out of those in power. You're worried about illegal aliens? Just you wait. I promise. You will be begging for an illegal alien if things go their way. And if, and only if, we had a shot at picking who or what we allow to help the human race, we had better hope that those currently in power are not there first. That is what this is about in actuality. Power over us so that the ultimate decisions are made on our behalf, as the puny humans can't think for themselves. We are taught as children and adults, as above, so below. What if above meant the sky and below the water? We are in such a state of confusion that the illusion is actually our reality. Our invasions, declarations, persuasions, and perversions are what we're consumed with, not with real world issues. And how can we? Is there an actual way? A way to tell the difference? The way to see the truth? We cannot wait for society to indoctrinate their ideals of life, our lives. We can't take history or his story as truth. And ask anyone who has seen a magic trick if we can even trust our eyes, sense of smell, taste, or hearing. What we do have is our need to learn, to ask, and to not accept anything as truth. For every minute that you read an important article or watch a documentary instead of a so called reality show, your brain will begin and basically pick more knowledge. You will become bored with the drivel that is mass programming, and your brain and your body will naturally do what it's supposed to do, and that's feed on knowledge. We cannot all leave all of our vices. I know I can't. I wouldn't expect anybody to do it. But it's moderation and moderation that counts. We live in a world full of excess and waste. That can change. Some have lost hope. And to be honest, I lose it sometimes too. But we cannot leave this to them. To those who have taken it this far, those who have our origins locked away only for the elite to enjoy and understand, to take the time that we have on this earth and use us as expendable tools to give them power as we waste away, drugged, and dumbed down? If there's any truth to some of the most ancient stories, then a slave race for the gods is in fact in full force. And us with paved roads and toilets that flush and prepackaged food, we think we've evolved and we can't have the wool pulled over our eyes. Wake up. We are powerful, we are love, we are caring, and yes, we are afraid. We are expected to sit idly by, and most do. But there are those of us that have more questions and that demand better answers. Everything that we do now is history. No, 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 wait, wait. Scratch that. It's our story, and we shouldn't have it any other way. I want to thank you for listening to Esoteric Truth Radio, and I am your host, Trinity.